All right, here we go. All right, so I'm going to tell a tale from the IT crypt. So it's 10 p.m. on a Friday evening on a long weekend. In the last 12 months, the team has been pouring their heart and soul into this application that they're building. They're gathering requirements, they're testing, the development's done, everything's good, and they've planned up until this very moment, and they're going to launch it. And they get the thumbs up, they pull the trigger, the application code is packaged up and copied onto the servers. The database scripts run successfully, and the smoke testing begins, and the team realizes nothing's working. So after hours and hours of troubleshooting, they remember that there was a config setting that was changed and a permission setting that was changed that didn't make it onto the implementation plan. So they made the same changes and everything came up fine and everyone celebrated and they went home. The following week, the project team got together and had a retrospective to talk about the last 12 months. What went well? What could they improve for next time? After a short round of applause, everyone kind of disbanded and went on their merry way. Of course, this is a completely fictional story, and this probably no one in this crowd has had any experience with this. So first of all, thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciated the talk from Dominic and Emily. There's a lot of what they said resonated in what's going to happen in my talk. My name is Paul Liebrand. I'm a director of technology transformation at Pacific Life. I'm realizing from this picture, it was taken about 4 years ago and my hairline's receding a little bit. And I promise it's got nothing to do with the journey I'm about to tell you. I maybe need to get my picture updated. But I was born and raised in South Africa. I came to America in 1992. I've been married for over 23 years and I have 3 wonderful young adult children. I've been around technology my entire life. As long as I can remember, I've been around technology. I started my career at Pacific Life as a self-taught software engineer. I've been with the company for 18 years. So why are we here tonight? I'm here to talk about our journey. As Emily alluded to, Pacific Life is a 151-year-old company. And we're a large enterprise. We're a life insurance company. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. All right. So we're a 151-year-old company, traditional enterprise, big silos and things like that. So our journey actually started 4 years ago. I was a developer who went through much of what the tale I told at the beginning of the story is long weekends, trying to get implementations done, a lot of problems. Some of it was human error, some of it was technology. Whatever it is, no matter how much planning we did, we always found ourselves on a long weekend trying to deploy applications. So and I was part of that problem. I was a developer and I was toss things over the wall and, someone else's problem, they'll figure it out. But I started to feel like we needed to do something different. So about 4 years ago, I had an idea rolling around in my head and I approached one of my mentors at the time and pitched this idea. And I still remember the last thing he said to me at the end of the conversation. He said, well, the answer's already no if you don't ask. So what have you got to lose? And whether he knows it or not, at that moment, that statement had a profound effect on the next 4 years of my career. I ran back to my desk, sat down, started, as a developer, sat down, started putting all my notes down. And I approached my VP at the time and said, I had this idea. And the premise is fairly simple. It's give me a small team. Let me show you a different way of delivering software or delivering value to the business. We will run a project light. We will focus on a specific part of the business and we're going to cross-function in a way that we're going to actually show you some benefits. Relatively quickly, we saw that was working really well. So we ended up actually transitioning to business aligned teams in our organization. And what that basically meant was we took our silo that we had development areas, test areas, release areas, and so forth. And we actually plucked all those people up and we put them on a team. And we said, you're going to focus on this part of the business and you're going to focus on this part of the business and you're going to focus on this part of the business. And that team had all the people, all the skills and everything they needed to be able to receive work, deliver it to the business. That change in itself was super beneficial to us. We saw immediate improvement across the board. we started to get a lot more domain knowledge. The teams were working closer together. We started lessening subject matter experts. And we noticed that, you know, anytime we went on a project-based approach, you know, you do the normal thing. You kick off a project, you get allocation, you know, request allocations, you gather a bunch of people together that don't work together normally. And we'd always see this like elongated ramp up time to do the work. People need to figure out how to work with each other. We need to understand the domain knowledge and things like that. So by making the shift, we were able to kind of solve that problem. And that's all we did. Then we decided, okay, now we want to take the next step of this, right? We wanted to start our agile transformation. We have tried agile transformations at Pacific Life before, and unfortunately they weren't successful because of how they were implemented. We were doing the typical, you know, let's kick every project off as an agile project. And then you'd have one developer that was part of 3 projects that had to stand in all the ceremonies and just never had time to do work. And those fell by the wayside. So we actually decided this time around, we were going to actually change the way we do it and be purposeful about it. So I went back to my VP again, and we got a smaller team, you know, an architect and a process engineer. And we said, let's build an agile framework or an agile practice for our organization, and not go like reinvent the wheel, but there's plenty of frameworks out there, Scrum, Kanban, all those. But let's build one that has our culture in mind, where we are today and where we want to be in the future. That team made the decision at the beginning to actually operate as a Scrum team to build our agile practice. So we set up time boxes, we created stories, we iterated, and within a very short amount of time, we had what we thought was a really good transition or transformation plan for teams, how to get a team from a traditional team into an agile team. So we went out to the organization and we found a team that was willing, a small team that was already part of our business aligned teams, and we essentially did an agile transformation with them. Once again, we saw stakeholder engagement go up. We saw they were able to break down work into smaller chunks. Overall, it was a very positive experience. That all occurred in the middle of, I'd say 2017. And then by the end of 2017, we had 5 other teams fully transitioned, and a bunch more in the pipeline. And we officially launched our version 1.0 of our agile practice. Out of that, we stemmed a team that focused on the product delivery side of the shop, meaning they offered mentoring, coaching, training, transitions. Our Scrum Masters are fed from that team. But that was their sole purpose, is to be servant leaders to the organization and help us continue to build this practice. Around that time, Pacific Life started doing a cloud-first strategy. And I knew that the model that we delivered software today wasn't going to work. You know, that we still had a lot of paperwork, a lot of sign-offs, a lot of handoffs happening. So we decided to put the next iteration of the team. We actually started plucking some engineers from across the company. So we had a network security engineer, we had a release engineer, a infrastructure engineer, a developer, and a software architect. And we brought them together and said, hey, our charter is to improve requested delivery, right? The minute the business requests something, we want to be able to deliver that to them as quickly as possible, fully tested, fully automated, and whatnot. So that began kind of our quote unquote DevOps venture. So that team went ahead and kind of started building some prototypes and, you know, proving out that the technology worked before we could start to get winning the hearts and minds of the organization. We then decided, okay, so part of us moving to the cloud, we did an app rationalization, as you do, and we started picking candidates, and we went to one of our business line teams and we said, okay, part of you guys transitioning your application from on-prem to the cloud, we're going to go ahead and transition you to an agile methodology. And then part of that, this delivery engineering team is going to embed with you, and we're going to kind of teach you the ropes. It was super important to me, I think, as Emily mentioned, is that we didn't create a DevOps team. To me, that's an anti-pattern. It's going to have a scale problem. So we were very cognizant of not doing that. Our path forward was to teach others how to be in control of their own destiny. So we embedded with the first team, and although ultimately they were able to get their app in the cloud, there were some learnings along the way. You know, we discovered that as we were working with them for a few weeks, the work started diverging. They started focusing on the old world, and my team started focusing on the new world. And we realized really quickly that's going to be a problem, because at some point we need to leave and they need to keep supporting this stuff. So fast forward to the second team, we actually approached it with a different mindset. We said to the team, we're going to embed with you, but there's one rule. We do not work on anything in your backlog without a team member from your team being there. And that was our first introduction of doing things like mob programming in our organization. And there was times where my team would show up to our collaboration area and no one from the other team would show up. So we started working on other things unrelated to their backlog. They soon learned that we were being serious about that. So they started being more engaged. They started coming more, bringing in all their team members. And we found that in a very short amount of time, they were actually working on the new things without my team being there, which was totally fine, because the agreement was, we don't work on it without you being there. So we felt that was very successful. And that team right now supports their own destiny. They create their own pipelines, they deploy their own code, and they can go as fast as they can, as fast as the business is willing to. So part of that exercise, we started to realize that it was more about the people than it was about the technology, right? So that was kind of the thing that turned us into like how to become DevOps in the organization, was more about teaching people and shifting the mindsets than it is about giving them tools. We know tools work, they just do. So that's just the nature of it. So out of these embeddings, we started actually introducing, pulling out best practices and standards and patterns that we would learn as we were embedding with these teams, that we would then share back to the organization. So the next team could benefit from that work. That turned into labs that we built, and hands-on labs that the teams could do inside our walls, so to speak. Because we found that a lot of times we would send a team out for training, and they would come back to our organization, but nothing worked, because outside our perimeter, we don't have firewalls and proxies and all those types of things. So we started framing our training around the technologies and concepts, infrastructure as code, pipelines, Git, things as Git, simple as Git, but looking at it from Pacific Life's security posture, Pacific Life's capabilities, everything to do with our environment. And we found that to be very successful. When we look across the landscape here, whenever you introduce change, you're talking about people, process, and technology or tools. The tools, like I said, the technology just works. And I'm still always surprised by the fact that many people think the technology is what is going to solve a DevOps transformation or a DevOps culture. It's just not. However, even though the technology works, there's still a lot of skepticism about the technology. That doesn't work here. That will never work at our company, those type of things. So we had to actually go out of our way to actually prove the technology worked. And we actually won a lot of people over that. When we started looking back at the processes, those are never going to change on their own. When you introduce a new technology or a new process, a lot that comes with it is a new process. Our change for us was about the people. And I think you heard that in Dominic's talk. I think you heard that in Emily's talk. It's more about investing in the people, because they're the ones who are actually going to make the change and do the things that need to happen, right? So what's important for us is we actually started establishing like learning time, dedicated time for our team members, where they would actually, they're expected in their day to actually carve out time to learn new things. That's kind of still a challenge, because we're still dealing with a lot of business priorities and stuff, but it's something that we're moving the needle on in our organization. And then as I said, this is always a kind of a catalyst, was the cloud transformation, but we also took a step back and going that the destination shouldn't matter, right? If we train our people to be adaptable, we train them to think about continuous improvement, and having all these business aligned teams with an agile transformation enabled that flexibility, then it doesn't matter the destination, because you can do CI/CD on-prem, you can do CI/CD to other data centers, you can do CI/CD to cloud providers, right? So we started thinking the destination shouldn't matter. Let's just teach them how to be adaptive. And to me, a lot of companies, when you think about DevOps, they always think about the technology or a group of people and things like that, where it's more about a culture, an overall organizational culture. So when I take a step back and I look at the last 4 years, how far Pacific Life's actually come in this area, I'm very proud of it. You know, we're not perfect. We still have a lot of challenges ahead of us, but we're building learning into our DNA. We're spending a big investment on digital transformation at the moment. But I feel like because our journey started 4 years ago, our organization is actually set up to adapt to our digital transformation. One of the biggest challenges that we found when we switched to these business aligned teams and product teams is we started losing consistency on things like naming standards and the testing frameworks and things like that, because we've never had that management area that was like focused on that. So one of the ways we're solving that now is we've recently switched over to like a matrix organization. So our product owners report to our VP. We have some people leaders that focus on the purely on the development of our staff. Not worrying about delivery of business priorities and things like that, but just how do I improve the technical competencies of our people, whether it's personal, I want to speak better, listen better, things like that, or I want to get better at Kubernetes or what have you. It's focusing on the people. That is something that has been missing in our organization for a long time, because we always found that the business value trumped that, the people development side of it. The company's been great, offers a lot of resources and a lot of capabilities to do this, a lot of brown bags and things like that. But it's finding the time for each individual to grow themselves, kind of connecting back to what Emily was saying. So we think that with the introduction of these matrix teams and people leaders, we're also creating practice owners within that organization where all of these individuals will align to a practice, which we think will start bringing back some of that stuff we lost when we did that transition before. Like I said, a digital transformation or an agile transformation is never easy, and you have to start somewhere. And I think, as you heard from Dominic and heard from Emily, it is about that. It's about the focus on the people. So the key takeaways I have for you all today is really to start small, iterate, and focus on the people. And I think that is what's going to set a company up for success more than the tools or tools and techniques that you bring in to a company. So that's what I got. So thank you very much for your time. If you have any questions, let me know.